I thought, given some of the feedback from sponsor presentations at previous meetings, I'd maybe try and talk about something that hopefully some of you will find exciting and something that I really am interested in, which is network automation. So I've put together a rough agenda to take us through to lunch, starting out with some fairly woolly slides about automation topics in general, and then hopefully drifting into something that's potentially more useful and maybe something that might interest you about network automation today. So first of all, the meandering tour about my thoughts on network automation, and it's somewhat clouded because I am a believer. I'm a believer in software, and well, of course you believe in software. You can touch it on your laptop and you can interface with it. But not only am I a believer in software, I believe that it's the inevitable future of network orchestration. And I believe that you can see that and it can be real on your networks because a few days of effort spent on building some simple tools will help you start to see benefits straight away in consistent decision making, ultimately leading to consistent troubleshooting and consistent provisioning of your services, because automation is really the most interesting enabler of your network configuration techniques that you have today, because it really does help in terms of consistency, speed of delivery, ease of support, integration time, compliance. There's so many areas where it can help, and essentially the thing I'd like to propose, a thing that I believe as a software believer, is that writing simple software will be a network engineer's job tomorrow as much as writing config is today. I genuinely believe that. And I'll talk a little bit about where you can maybe start, and with an example. Where do you start? And I think some people who saw me talk about this at Links before may have seen this slide. I believe that the place to start is to take one simple, boring process that you hate to do, or someone in your team hates to do, or someone in the office next door hates to do, and you just replace it with a piece of software. Without necessarily a concern at the beginning on software quality, because let me guarantee, if you get good at it and you find it adds value and it's allowing you to differentiate, or you start to do this more and more, you're going to bin the first script you write. I absolutely guarantee it. So take a simple process and without too much thought and concern, just turn it into an automated script. So maybe here's an example that you might like to talk about, or you might like to think about. When IX and IX Reach became the same organisation, I straight away had to start looking at how to maybe make sense of the fact that we were connected to suddenly 30 exchange points where Allegro was connected to 4 or 5, and the dimension of the complexity of the problem just got so much bigger overnight. So we had all these exchange points connected. We had thousands of willing peers. Where is the routing suboptimal? Where do we have traffic but we don't have adjacencies with people we maybe peer with somewhere else? So this was the thing I thought I'd try to automate, answering that question. Now, why is that a particularly good place to start? Why would I start there? Well, straight away I'm talking about reading information from the network and not writing information, because if you start your automation project with a desire to write configuration to the network, you're going to go and get it wrong, and you're going to go and break your network. And also another reason why this is a good place to start is because it solves a real life problem. So there's a feedback loop attached to this. So I have a real problem to solve. I can give myself feedback on it. Or if the peering coordinator sits next to me, he can give me feedback. You know, your script sucks, or hey, your script's actually quite good. So I started looking at answering this question automatically with Netconf, which may be new to some people in the room. Anybody used Netconf before? Okay. There's not a sea of arms in the air, so hopefully this is quite interesting. This is an API that some devices, good devices, support to allow you to read and write configuration and state. It uses XML-RPC as the transport, and it mirrors the device's capabilities and configuration. So you can read the config from a device in a programmatic way, and you can ask the machine questions, what's the state of this in a programmatic way. And essentially, the way that you do this is the XML that you'd send to a Juniper MX to say, give me the BGP routing summary, like the list of adjacencies, the list of configured sessions. So if you want to get data out of your machine in a programmatic way, you'd spit that XML at the device, and it would spit XML back at you and say, here's some information about some stuff that's configured. But you're all network engineers, and what is XML? Why is that interesting? And isn't that rather complicated? Well, actually it's not. What it actually looks like to generate that XML to go and ask the router some questions, it's just this line of code if you happen to be using PYEZ, which I'll explain in a moment. You will type in show BGP summary on your router, you can type in that line of code and get the same thing back. And parsing the XML is just another few small lines of code if you happen to be using libraries that do this. And that's the point. There are libraries that are going to do this work for you. You don't actually have to learn, how do I start SSH in a script? How do I send XML over a transport? Someone's already gone and done this for you. So if you go and have a look at this presentation afterwards, you can download PYEZ from GitHub, which is a useful thing that does all the difficult things of logging into a Juniper and getting stuff out for you. It doesn't give you necessarily information about peering sessions and this sort of analysis. So I thought I'd, instead of just writing simple scripts, put some of the logic together that helps you do that and release it as a set of libraries, because you'll find that in the networking space right now, people are just doing this. They're solving a problem once and then putting it on GitHub so that people can solve each other's questions. So again, if you download the presentation afterwards, you can, what do the kids call it? Clone this repository and it'll solve your problems as well. So essentially you could see that someone called Jeremy, in fact, who's a really clever guy, has written some library that helps you go and issue commands to a router, and I've written a library that helps you go and get prefixes and AS paths and things like that out of BGP summaries. And you can use that today. You can grab that today. Now, I've got the information out of my router, and I'm really, really interested to see how my router compares with the real world so that I can answer my question, where have we got traffic and missing adjacencies? So when this stuff gets really real is when you can consume data from the outside world as well, things like the RIPE database, your IX database, for example, and compare that with a different set of data that's coming out of your router. Again, I think the kids have a word for it. They call this a mashup. So again, I've written a peering DB client inside PyPeer that you can use to start to get some information out of peering DB and compare it with your view of what is real. And there we go. I just glue all those libraries together with a very, very simple bit of Python in the middle, and I was able to answer the question in a day. So I found a network here that I very subtly snipped the AS number off from, but I found a load of peering opportunities that were not taken advantage of. And now, as a peering operator, I can go and fix some of that and stop dragging traffic around the network. I've used software to make the internet a bit better. Hooray, this is what I've said we're all going to be doing soon, so get used to it. It's version 1 of code, and it's as you can see, I've glued together libraries other people have written, and I didn't know how to do something, so I had a look on Stack Overflow, and that's how everyone writes their first script, and it's normal. Because the last stage of writing a script is to make version 1.1, which is better, the iterate and improve process. And that's been the model of how we've done software and automation since the beginning of time at Allegro and IX. We started out with a project to help get pricing together in one place, and eventually that iterated and became the Snap platform, which is a utility that's so complete it actually allows other network operators to configure our network on our behalf. And again, it's with the IX teams, we've been building a tool to help provide BGP Edge on software virtual machines that eventually is turning into an operating system that you can configure at the edge of your network and do exactly that as well. So the iteration process is very, very important. The downside to Netconf, it's quite vendor specific, and it does require entry-level programming skill. There's some other interesting areas of network automation that are worth reading about and thinking about. Ansible, people who have to integrate their network, and if they have if they're a big Unix shop, will really, really love Ansible because the same tool can configure network and server environments at the same time. A really, really interesting piece of work. I'm sorry, I'm rushing because it's lunch and everyone looks hungry, and you're looking at me, so I want to feed you. Yang is a really, really interesting piece of work that Rob Shakir, who works in BT, is doing. One of the most interesting pieces of work in right now to make. You can think of this as config as code as config again. It's a simple abstraction. It's not actually that simple, but it's an abstraction layer that turns into code, that turns into config on your running devices. And you can have a look at the draft that he's been working on if you'd like to see how that interfaces with BGP. And there's also OpenFlow, which is a more of a holistic network orchestration and management layer. Arguably, again, more scalable because it's got the network state built in. It's not just a set of scripts that you're using to hack together and get data out, because at the same time, the later iterations of this presentation may be describing how scripts don't scale, and you need something more holistic and a more complete data model for what's happening on your network if you're actually going to interface with it properly. So, yep, here we are. We now the sponsor bit. We're live in 130 POPs, running with some stuff that's broadly automated, with more automated tomorrow than is today. If you'd like to talk to us about any kind of connectivity requirement, BGP transit, DWDM, and layer 2s all over the place, lots of IXs. How long have I got? I've got to stop. Okay, we sell all of that, so I'll see you in the lunch break. Thank you very much. Any questions, let me know, or drop me a line on Twitter, email, anything. Thank you.
Any questions for Andy?
Oh, okay. Yes. Oh, you'll all have to wait on this side of the room, because this side of the room has questions.
Lance Wright, Right Night. Do you have any fibre in Ireland?
Come and grab me in a moment, and we'll tell each other secrets.
Hi, Dimitrios Pezaros from University of Glasgow. When you talk about automation and orchestration, immediately one thinks of software-defined networking and OpenFlow that you covered in your last slide. And I was surprised not to hear about SDN at all so far today.
I've got another copy with more buzzwords in it if you'd like me to.
Right. Now, what you talked about is slightly different in the sense that it's much less standardized. So a network engineer logs into a router and runs some script. How far do you think this can get you without any sort of standardization?
It does two things that are desperately important. It solves a real problem you have today, which allows you to go and get confidence in your skills, confidence in your ability, and a greater understanding of what you need to know in order to solve the bigger problems. Oh God, I had another thing. It solves your problems you have today, and you can deploy it with what you have right now. You don't actually have to go and figure out what does this mean? What is my SDN strategy? How can I implement Helium? Things like that. You don't actually have to go and do that. You can write a script in an afternoon and leave early because you've got the answer without having to go and open Excel and do all this other work. So I think it's quite different. It's about building confidence. There probably. If there are people in the room who haven't tested OpenFlow and Helium and things like that, who don't know what it is, that's quite inaccessible. But the ability to pull a few libraries off GitHub, run them, and solve real problems you have will take you a great deal further than doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, I just thought that they would be more reluctant to do that than to try OpenFlow, for example, or a standard. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. Any more? Okay.
Okay,
thank you.
Andy.